Every day, you essentially pay your dues by doing the harder thing when it's the right thing to do. Hello, Syd. How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm good. We were just joking before that this is like a late night. Usually, I have like sun in the background, but it's just like pitch black. We're just doing a late night grind right now. So I appreciate you after work doing this.
No worries.
Yeah. I think this is hilarious how fast the podcast came together because we were planning on talking about this topic and then you tweeted about it and then I DM'd you and now we're here like a week later. So clearly from the responses on Instagram and Twitter, people are curious about this topic as well. So is this in your mind already? Were you thinking about this? Like, how did this already come up before you tweeted it?
Um, yeah, I feel like, I don't know how familiar you are with, I'm gonna call it my content.
Mhm.
But I had done like a YouTube channel all throughout kind of
Mm,
the half of my career.
yeah.
I've tried to do a really good job of like showing people what, NCAA gymnastics is like, or NCAA sports in general.
Mm,
And now that I've been done, and that's a missing piece of my life, things have come up for me personally. I've talked to old teammates about it. So it just felt like a topic that was coming up in my day-to-day life.
mm,
And then it was something that I wanted to make content on, and I wasn't sure, really how to do it. It's
mhm.
awkward to sometimes sit in front of a camera and film a YouTube video
Vlog it. Yeah.
when there's nothing to vlog. It's just like me talking. So,
Yeah,
when you had reached out about a podcast, I feel like it's a lot easier to talk about stuff like this when it's a conversation and an
for
interview
sure.
versus
For
straight
sure.
just
And it's
me to the
also funny too because the way like the Utah like blood has come in the podcast. Like I know Tom from way back, but it was like we just talked to Carly about like some struggles inside college season, all that kind of stuff. And then Miley came on. I know Miley from her elite days. So we watched her
Mhm.
like into now. And then you're on the podcast, which is like I just finished and I'm moving on. So we're catching like all sides of possible
Yeah.
college gymnastics, which works out. But it's funny because I always like give the opening question of like, what have you been up to since like college ended? And like, how's it going? It's like an icebreaker, but I feel like for this conversation, it's like the exact topic we're talking about. So yeah, what have you been up to since college? And maybe start there with what has kind of been the transitionary zone before we dive into like subtopics, you know?
Um, yeah. So obviously gymnastics ended, and then I graduated about 2 weeks after that. That was big. I moved out after college. I lived with one of my teammates. So that was kind of also like a big transition for me. Um, got a job, did a bunch of interviews, kind of, had to grow up and become an adult.
Yeah.
So now I mean, my life's pretty boring compared to what it used to be like, but
Mm,
yeah, I'm just adjusting. I would say it's like a really interesting period of trying to understand your life and understand who
mhm.
you are without sport. And I've been fortunate. I have a great support system to help me through that. So it's been a lot of time with, family and friends and, working and adjusting to a professional career and what that looks like. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Like
just
you're like in like no woman's land, like no man's land. It's just like this like gray area. You're trying to figure out all these constellation of stars. You know what I mean?
trying to figure things out. But then again, like for once in my life, I'm normal.
Mm.
And that is, I think, the part of like why this topic is so important is because as an athlete, you're never normal. Your life's not ever normal, and especially gymnasts, their lives are not normal. And
For sure.
now you're a
And I
normal person.
and I mean, there's so many like sub layers that we have to break into. But first of all, is like I think the craziest schedule change or the craziest change for me was like scheduling and like the regimentedness of my life. Like I
Mhm.
had this for sure. I did not do super high level gymnastics, but I was in grad school as well. But it was like from 3 to 23, I had like a schedule. I like did this. I went to gym. I went to school. I came home. I did my homework. I went to bed. I went on the meets on the weekends, and I literally just did like the same stuff over and over again. And then it was just like an e-break hit when I had to go into a real world. And it was like completely like I had dead time. I was like, I don't really know what to do here. Did you experience that too, or was it different?
Um, yeah, I think for me, like being in club gymnastics, the schedule there was really, really crazy. And
Hmm.
then transitioning to college, the schedule dropped off. The
Hmm.
load of practice went
Hmm.
down. Um, in college, you're not going to class for hours on end one day, it's broken up.
Sure.
So I think that there was a lot of free time in my life throughout college, which is kind of weird because most
Hmm.
people would think college sports, you're like so busy, which you are, but not
Yeah.
compared to
Yeah.
being an elite gymnast.
Correct.
Um, but then again, like that gets amplified again when you're done and you're
Mm.
just like, now what?
Yeah.
Like no one is telling me what to do. And that's all I've known my entire life.
Mm, right. And also that on that piece, which for me was the team aspect of college, I was always like around people. I had friends at all dining halls and like we were always hanging out. We were always doing something. And then when I moved into my own apartment and like, I mean, you said you live with a roommate, but like my like group of friends just went like, and like scattered across the country to get their own jobs. And that was super hard for me, which was like, I literally saw 20 people who I loved and cared about every day. And that was like, oh man, I'm like kind of just like finding people to hang out with and like new friends at work. What? This is what I don't want new friends. I want my friends.
It's very it's so interesting, and there's not enough time in the day for us to dive into every aspect of it, but that's hard. The absence of like what you know
Mm,
is so scary, and you go from seeing people 24/7, you see them every single day in some capacity for like hours upon end, and one day that like is completely gone. And like you had
yeah.
said, people move away, people move on. And for a lot of people, they like move completely on. And that's, I think, a battle that like I'm facing now is it's like, how do you balance involvement in your sport and involvement in
Mm,
the people's lives that used to do it with you while still staying true to who you are and the journey you're on
mm.
and your sense of closure and moving on. So I think that it's really difficult going from, yeah, like seeing people that you would consider like your support system, your closest friends, and then all of a sudden it's like
Yeah.
that's that's no longer your life.
It's like the void, the void of people and communication and
Mhm.
connections, you know? And yeah, I mean, this is going to come up eventually. So you don't have to share your journey or anybody does, but like a lot of people have a very bittersweet experience in gymnastics. Like their experience, particularly in elite gymnastics and high level college gymnastics, is it doesn't always end beautifully and it doesn't end well. And so when they're done, a lot of people don't want to be attached to the sport at all because they didn't have a great and they have a real bad taste in their mouth. So it's like that is another whole dynamic of this, which is I talk to a lot of people who are medically retiring, who are not
Yeah.
really going out on their terms. And then they're like, I'm burning this place down, gymnastics, and I'm never coming back, which is sad. But
Yeah.
that's brutal, man. That's like a lot of unresolved difficulty to work through on your own, you know?
Yeah, I was very fortunate. I will
Mm,
say, obviously, there are parts in my career that are bitter, and there are things that I feel like done a very good job of just like not talking about. And I've
mm,
tried to shed a lot of positive light on gymnastics because I didn't, I had a, I, my club experience was great. I have the most amazing club coach who I still, have a relationship with today. But there were coaches that came into my career that were abusive and, they're, all the bitterness that you could
yeah.
feel.
Yeah.
And then coming into college, like I had a fantastic career.
Mm,
Um, like I can't really say a lot of bad things about, me as a college athlete. But then again, there's parts of my career that are very bitter and I just haven't
mm,
necessarily talked about it. And so for me, being done, the bitterness has come up more now than
mm,
ever. Because I think
mm.
it's easy when you're in it to kind of mask it and focus on the good and what's next. And you're on this like mission to do something.
Sure.
And when it's over, hindsight's 2020, you start to think about like the experiences that you went through and like you're like, "Oh my god,
Mm,
this is a way bigger deal to me. Like this is why I'm the way that I am." And I'm
mm,
someone I totally believe in therapy and understanding why
mm-hmm,
operate the way you do. And I think in gymnastics, it's really, really important. And it's really important in this transition to understand like, why am I bitter? Like 95% of my career was great. If you told me I could do it again, I would. So why is part of me feeling like I can't be around it?
mm,
And that understanding has been really hard for me personally. And I know a lot of my teammates that have recently graduated kind of feel similarly. It's like it was great, but oh, there's those few things where you're like, dude, like, why did I go through that? Why did I not stand up for myself? Like, all of
Mm,
those conversations come up, and they come up with maturity, and now you're not under a telescope. There's a lot of factors,
mm.
but yeah, definitely, I understand completely now, being done, why people don't support the sport once they've moved on from it.
Yeah. And I'm so happy you said that and we're going down this path because I think the undertone, man, I love college gymnastics. I love club
Yeah.
gymnastics. I wouldn't still be here if it wasn't. But
Mhm.
there feels as though there's still this like foggy veil of like some people are just like, yeah, what you see on the outside is exciting and glamour and glitz and it's all fun. But like behind those walls, man, it's brutal. It's really tough on people mentally and emotionally and physically to go through the sport, particularly when we haven't seen the most wholesome culture change at some angles of it. And so I feel like a lot of that bitterness and resentment does stir up when somebody gets removed from it and they're like, yo, what? Like, why didn't I
Mhm.
do that when I was 12? Like a lot of people I talk to that are like, I've been fortunate in this part of my career is I treated some gymnasts from like 14 to 22 all the way through their scholarship. And then they graduate and come back and they're like, dude, what was happening when I was 12? Like, why in the world was I training 25 hours a week as a kid? And like, why was I pushing so hard as a kid? Like, it's hard. It's hard. So like, I don't know. I mean, therapy for sure. I think everybody should get like
Yeah.
mandatory free therapy when they leave school for sure. But is that the main mechanism is to like have a professional lifeline to like walk through that? Is it like debriefing with college? Is it journaling? Like what's the options there for people?
That's I think that is the burning question.
Yeah,
And I think a lot of people, after posting and seeing people's feedback, a lot of people, privately message me. And I can understand not wanting to.
sure.
You want to protect your experience. You want to protect your coaches, your
For sure.
university, all of that type of stuff. But the question that came up was like, whose responsibility is it? Is it on
Mm,
you solely as an athlete? Is it on, you know, your high school coaches? Is it on, your institution? Is it on your college coaches? Like there's so many people that kind of have like skin in the game in
mm,
this. Obviously it's you personally, so I think the majority of the responsibility does fall on you, and I think going to therapy and utilizing the resources that you have when you're a college athlete is the greatest thing you can do.
mm,
And it's a conversation that I think everyone avoids because it's hard. I think that's
mm,
why it's not talked about. It's why not once did my college coaches say, they would sit me down and be like, "All right, Sydney, like, what's your plan?" And it was a very logical question in terms of like, where are you going to live? Do you have jobs lined up? Like, what are you interested in? Is there someone I can connect you with career wise? Like, those types of conversation, which are great because those need to happen. But there's never the conversation of like, what are you going to do now that gymnastics over? Or
mm,
who are you without gymnastics? And I think that those conversations need to come into play, especially in gymnastics in college. Like, there's no professional league.
mm,
A lot of other sports, college is kind of like this springboard towards professional sports, or it's the end of their career. Um, in gymnastics, it's like, yeah, you can go back to elite, but it's going to end pretty
mm,
soon. I
mm.
think that a lot of conversations need to be had with a professional, because I think, as much as your coaches want to provide insight and pretend like they know everything, like no one knows everything, but someone,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? I
I
think that
totally do. I totally
those
get it.
conversations have to be had. And it's, for me, like I avoided it until like the very end of my career
Mm,
because
mm,
I was so afraid to talk about it. I was so afraid to hear what someone had to say because for so long I was Sydney the gymnast, and the thought of like, that's not who you're going to be in a month. Like, you need to start wrapping your head around that. And it was a really hard conversation to have, but I'm glad that I did have it.
mm,
And I think the thing that any university could take away from this conversation in general is like, you need to continue to support your alumni through this.
yeah.
You're, we fill out an injury report. So, oh, if I want to go get my labrums fixed in my shoulders, the university will pay for that surgery up to 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If I need to get my knee checked out, then they'll pay for, the things that you list.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there needs to be that support, the mental health aspect of it. I was like, where's the year of free therapy for athletes that are done?
I dig that. Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, great. You can support my like physical health, but I've also undergone a lot of trauma and emotional things that I too need support with.
High stress level in college gymnastics.
And therapy is not cheap. Therapy is not necessarily affordable. Good therapy is hard. Sports therapy is even more specific. How great would it be if your, psychologist throughout your college career who knows you could help you through this transition?
Extra 6 months, like after your senior year. Yeah.
It's a hard sport to explain to people that have never worked with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree 100%. And I think there's a couple things, right? Like I always picture these things as like leaning on the different like support structures you have based on what's appropriate, right? Because like you said, some of these conversations that you have with your parent, you don't want to have with your coach, that you don't want to have with your best friend. So if there are some outlets here, whether it's therapy and your own journaling, but also just like, your group of friends, you can just pretty much say anything to and go off the handle. And like, it's not going to be taken seriously. And you just like vent a little bit, like that's needed too. But man, like if I think that if you could have, exit interviews be required for all gymnasts, no matter whether they're medically retire or whether it's in club, like club coaches should have exit interviews too, as well, to understand what they're doing well or not well, or have conversations. But I mean, I'm just like thinking about how aggressive the on-ramp is to college gymnastics. Like you have so much stuff at your disposal for like housing assistance and academic assistance and meal plans and this and that. And it's like this very nice on-ramp off. And then you fall off a cliff when you go off the other side. So like maybe some sort of like optional, but also available off-ramp for 6 months of like, here are some resources, here's some things to do, here's some plans. Because I feel like every college coach in their heart who obviously works so hard to do this, like knows this is a good idea, but there's really no examples or lattice structures that I know of, which is like, here's a 3 to 6 month off-ramp program after like your whole world just stops from being a gymnast again.
Yeah, no, I think that's like, it is. You get this like very nice, easy transition into college sports where they introduce you to a bunch of people. And as you go through your career, you start to utilize those people. But one day it's completely done. And I don't think you can just expect people, gymnasts, athletes of any kind to just be okay with that, like dropping off a cliff. And it makes you, that's when the bad parts of it come up. And that's where you start to, think about the bitter things, and you want to be like, oh, they didn't help me. They don't reach out to me. They don't, blah, blah, blah. And that's also not healthy for you. So I think that like, there has to be a way, like there has to be a way for not only gymnasts, but other college sports and coaches.
Yeah. And I think it's important to note here too, while we're talking in the context of colleges, I've had a lot of conversation with elites and national teams around the world that also feel like either junior or seniors that go through the same thing, which is like, they're part of like selection camps, they're on teams, they're going all these places, and then they don't get picked for a team. And it's like, poof, like they just disappear, they retire into the ether. And it's just like, there's no support from the national staff for anything to be like, what can we do to support you in a transition away or stuff like that. And it's hard, man, when your whole life is not only your identity is gymnastics or a sport, but also I'm curious about your thoughts on this because you have way more experience than I do, which is like, you're always training for something. You have a goal, you're competing for something. You kind of have like a mission set out for you to do. And then you get away from that and there's no thing to train for. There's no like, I mean, we're going to definitely get in the conversation. People really struggle with like, lifestyle and exercise and food and like all that kind of stuff. Cause there's just nothing, like there's no structure. There's nothing to train for anymore. So it's just like, you just, again, like float off into the ether and you're just like, okay, now what do I do with my workouts and with all of my stuff? It's like, just like blank land, like I'll just jump on the elliptical, I guess.
It's funny. I was talking to my boyfriend last night about it. Cause I was like, I'm coming on this podcast. He knows, I mean, he's been with me. He was, there for almost every meet of my last season. So he kind of saw the highs and lows of this like whole transition more than anyone else in my life has. And he was kind of like asking me, what are your like main thoughts on it? Like, what are you going into this podcast, thinking very logical, very logical. And I just tried to explain to him, I was like, since I was 5, every decision I made in my life was surrounded by my top priority, which was gymnastics. Obviously, if I was failing in school, my parents would pull me from gymnastics and make sure, I didn't do that. There was obviously things in my life that, yes, were like more important than gymnastics, but the schools I went to were based around what my practice schedule was. The food I ate was all performance-based. The workouts you were doing are all for gymnastics. You didn't go to birthday parties as a kid because you had to go to gymnastics. And then one day, that priority that your whole life has been surrounded by is no longer there. Like those conversations don't happen in your brain anymore. And it's also not healthy to think of yourself as an athlete for your entire life. Like you can train, sure, if you want to go train to be a bodybuilder because it gives you purpose, that's great. But I think it's important to sit through the normal phase and like eat like a normal person, work out like a normal person, go to the birthday parties that you've never been able to go to because you're now a normal person. So it's the idea that this top priority in your life vanishes. And it's really hard to then like surround yourself around something when you don't know what that thing is. Even your career, even your job, that doesn't dictate as much in your life as gymnastics ever did, and it won't. And it shouldn't. If you are in a career that does that, then you should probably run. But I think that's the part of it that's really hard, is it's like, how do I've always had like this guidance through my life of every decision was for gymnastics. And now that guidance is gone. And there's this essence of like a lot of freedom, which is very positive, but is also really, really scary.
Good. So there's two things in there that are really important. So one is the avenue of like finding a new purpose and something that's like worth working towards or driving towards. That's an important piece I want to touch first. But the second piece is the need to not judge yourself and because I mean, for sure, there's so many gymnasts that like, they do take that break, they downshift a little bit, and then like all of like the noise in their head comes in about like, oh my God, I can't believe you're eating this, or you're going out, you're not working out as hard and this and that. Like, I know for a fact that is something that I was terrified of, that, especially like a lot of body image issues and like, oh my God, I used to train like 20 hours a week and all this stuff. But let's start on the first avenue, which is, how do you go about, I mean, you're probably still working through it, and maybe I can share some thoughts of what happened to me, but how do you work through like my purpose and my drive in my life was about gymnastics, and now I have nothing as like a North Star to be excited about or to train for or to do? Like, I don't know, what are some, maybe it's like a think out loud portion of the podcast for what people can do to find something else that's exciting, whether it's athletic or not?
I think that I have an unpopular opinion when it comes to this.
Go on.
I don't think anything in my life, maybe unless I enter motherhood, will fill the void that gymnastics was. I don't think any hobby or anything that I can pick up that isn't going to be a professional level or whatever will ever take up the amount of time, effort, energy, money, everything that gymnastics did.
Yeah.
And I think that piece of it is okay. And it's not about filling the void completely, because I don't think you'll ever be able to. I don't think anything in my life, hobby-wise or purpose-wise, I don't think anything will ever amount to what gymnastics was to me. And so I think that I'm just going to keep disappointing myself over and over again if I try to find something to replace gymnastics, versus kind of grieving the idea that it's over and finding a bunch of things, finding different ways to fulfill my life without feeling like I'm filling a void.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a fascinating concept.
Like because everyone's like, what hobbies do you like to do? And I'm like, I've never had time to do a hobby. Like, and I'm not someone who, I don't really like to hike. I don't really like to play golf. I don't like to go play pickleball. Like, I'm not that person. I think what's important is like, understand your identity, understand who you are. And when you're comfortable with who you are, you're not going to feel the need to fill the void. That's what I've learned. I've learned that like I'm comfortable, you know, being Sydney the XYZ. I don't have to be Sydney the gymnast to be who I am. And therefore I don't need to go chase something that's going to give me the same feelings that gymnastics did, because I don't think anything ever will. And I think that's just constant disappointment after disappointment.
Yeah. No, I've never thought about it that way, but I think that's an important perspective, right? Which is like accept and like just embrace the fact that nothing will ever be gymnastics, right? And like that's okay, right? But like kind of come to terms with that and accept that and like put it on the shelf as a chapter, and then find like maybe a close second, third, fourth, fifth that like these are kind of cool and I enjoy doing these, but like it's okay if it doesn't ever give me like the rush, the excitement that, you know, gymnastics ever did.
And I think let gymnastics be the book on the shelf that you can look at and think about, and there's happy and there's sad and there's highs and there's lows. Just let it be that, because once you're done, like you can't go back. You can't change your experience. And I think a lot of, you know, athletes go into coaching or they fall back into like gymnastics. And you know, and I think it's great if you're that passionate about it and you want to coach, or you're that passionate and you want to, you know, put on the grips one more time, great. But I think a lot of people use it as a crutch. And they look at it as like, this is my way to hang on and not have to accept that it's over.
Yeah. And dangerously is going into coaching or judging or whatever, because you're trying to fill your own void and you're doing it for you, not for them. You know what I mean? Like that's, I've seen a couple coaches who are for sure living vicariously through their kids because they still want the excitement and the attention and the hurrahs and the medals and all that kind of stuff. Like, ooh, that's a dangerous place to be, man.
Yeah, I think coach because you're passionate about it. Coach because you want to give back to the little girl like you once were, or the little boy, whatever that mission is for you. But I do think like going into it because you can't let it go, or going into it because you're not ready, also isn't fair to an athlete, because I think everyone's had a coach that lived vicariously through them, or a parent. I saw it, you know, the kids that it's like, well, she needs to do this. And I'm like, your kid doesn't want to. Your kid doesn't want to go to the Olympics. You want to. And that's not fair. And I think that like, you're so right in that sense of go into coaching and stay in the sport because it's not for you. You're doing it for somebody else. And that's where I think that my idea of how to deal with the void is to not necessarily aim to fill the void completely. You know, it's like, I have to just accept that it's over. As hard as that is. And that's what I'm going through right now, is like, it's over. We're going to be happy about it. We're going to learn from it. We're going to educate people on things. There's ways to, you know, still like honor that part of you, but like it's like death. That is truly, I think, what it feels like. You're mourning the loss of a part of you.
Yeah. And I think to that point, back to like kind of hopefully constructive advice here is like, if you can have the ability to lean into like your discomfort and like kind of like think about it with like a person or a therapist or a journal, whatever, you can kind of tease out, okay, like, why is this so hard for me? Like, why is this so painful? And what you tend to see is you unpack those facets of like, well, I'm missing like a drive and a purpose. I'm missing like my community and my friends that I used to be a part of. I'm missing like maybe a self-esteem piece because I like training hard and I like working for something. And I kind of got that self-esteem out of being accomplished and trying to be the best version of myself. And maybe you can never replace those things, like you said, but maybe there's other ways to fill those buckets somewhat that are at least bridges towards the next step forward, you know?
And that's why it's important to understand where the feelings are coming from. Because there is a reason, and there are parts of it that I really miss, and there are parts of it that I don't miss. So it's not like I need to go chase the parts that I don't miss. You know, I need to go try and find things that make me feel all the great parts that gymnastics made me feel. You don't need to entirely feel like you got to keep replacing, because then what if that hobby ends, or what if that purpose ends, or something like that? Then what? Whole life is going to be focused on this like dumping of purpose and putting your self-worth into something. Whereas I think the conversation needs to be more about like, you are more than an athlete. You are more than a sport. You are even more than a college student. Like, there are so many of those identity questions that don't really get talked about. And I think the moment that you're a freshman on campus, that needs to be a conversation. Like, who are you, if not a gymnast? If we take that piece away, who are you? And it's come up with, this is like total left field, but it's come up with this like name, image, and likeness thing when everyone's like, build your brand. And I'm like, you're talking to a bunch of college athletes who think that their brand is that they're a gymnast. But there's thousands of gymnasts. So what is different about you? You know, like, what makes you you,
right,
despite the fact that you're a gymnast? And that's a hard conversation. And I wonder if it's going to come up now more because of name, image, and likeness, because you need to have those unique factors that make you different. But I think that's the hard part, is like, who are you going to be without this? And how can you still stay true to who you are no matter what you do? You are more than what you do.
Yep.
What you do is what you do, and who you are is who you are. And those things need to be handled separately. So I think when people try and like fill the void and come up with things, again, they put a lot of their worth and their purpose into what they do versus who you are. If you want to help people, there's multiple ways to help people. If you want a coach to help people, great. That's your purpose, because that's who you are, not what you're doing. I know like, I'm explaining
no,
it well,
I get it. I get it. No, I get it. Like, that's like, coaching is a vessel that you like helping people. You like helping people because you're a helpful person. You can do that via a soup kitchen or via donating or via coaching. Like, there's a lot of avenues to do that, but you as a human enjoy helping people or enjoy something about that. And it's just like a way you present that, right? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah. Like, one of the girls I graduated with, Alexia Birch, her and I came into school together and graduated at the same time because we both did our COVID year. And she's simultaneously coaching gymnastics and going to nursing school. And to me, I see a common theme.
Sure.
She's very selfless. She wants to help people. That has always kind of been who she is. And whether she's doing that at a hospital as a nurse or doing that as a coach to athletes, it's the main avenue is the same. And so to me, that's so important, is like, find what that part of you is.
Sure.
And then however you give that back, you'll always feel like you have purpose.
Yeah. And I think kind of on this was coming a little bit later as we talk about questions, but I think we're kind of summarizing like some helpful things that we can hopefully give people to think about in terms of helping. So on the personal level, right, we have like journal, therapy, friends, whatever, fill those things. And then organization wise, like the whole, like, have an off ramp, exit interview, stuff like that. But I'm genuinely curious your thoughts on this. Is that at a club and parent level, I think this actually starts there, when we have to be responsible now about not pinning their identity as a gymnast, right? It's not, you're not a gymnast all the way. You're a human who does gymnastics. You also do this for a hobby. You also like this. You have this about you. And I think we put them on a really dangerous, slippery slope when we just peg them as a gymnast their whole life in club and in college, and then, you know, through college, whatever. And then that goes away. So I think as parents, especially as coaches, like when I was coaching and stuff, it's like, I never view them as like a gymnast who is only doing this as a thing. And like, they have so many other things about them that are human level. And you happen to do gymnastics too. And it's super important and you love it and you want to go to college or you want to make a gold medal. Cool. But like, if parents and coaches at the club level are creating that sense of, you are a gymnast only and your worth is based on your performances or your involvement or your level, when that goes away in the blink of an eye, whether it's an injury when you're 12 or when you retire when you're 21, like, that's a huge way to build a bridge that's going to fall apart quick. That's my opinion. I don't want to say that for you, but I think that might be something.
Yeah, I remember I quit gymnastics when I want to say like 13.
Me too. For 2 years. That's crazy.
I can't remember. I think it was definitely a few months and I was like, I'm done. I just gave up. One day I was like, I can't do this anymore. there's a lot of things that had to be unpacked in terms of like dealing with an abusive coach that I didn't want to tell my parents about, that type of thing. But I remember my parents sat me down and I was always so bummed as a kid that like I was just a gymnast. I remember telling them, I was like, I want to be cool like a regular person. I remember telling my mom this, and it was like, their life seems so great. Like, you're watching TV and they hang out with their friends after school and they're going to the mall with their friends to meet boys. And it's like that aspect of your life, it's not there when you're a gymnast. It's really not. And I remember my parents sat me down at the kitchen table and they had a piece of paper and they wrote, Sydney is. And I had to go through, and I wasn't allowed to write gymnast. And I had to go through and think of things that I was that were independent of my sport, and I sat there and I was like, I'm nothing. And my parents were like, no, you're a daughter, you're a sister, you're a student, you're, all of these things. And I remember that being like so impactful in my life because I still remember it to this day. And yeah, I saw a lot of kids growing up that were pegged to their sport, and that's how their parents looked at them. It's how, I was lucky I didn't have coaches that did that. Our coaches really took a holistic approach to who we were as people, and it's why I'm still close with her to this day. But yeah, the conversation doesn't start in college.
Yeah.
If it starts in college, it started too late.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the majority of your life as a gymnast happened before you came to college. I was a gymnast 12 years before I stepped foot in college.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I was fortunate to have parents that recognized it. And I think, if any parents are listening to this, like it's important to have conversations with your kid about who they are, without pegging them to their sport. And it's okay. It is a big part of their life. And there's no, like, you're not a horrible parent or a horrible coach because you didn't have the conversation.
Yep.
And
with that too, the communication point, man, is just so important, like at all stages and phases of gymnastics, because if there's one thing I know for sure is that goals change a ton from when you're 8 and you're starry eyed and you're watching a meet and you're so excited to 10 to 12 when puberty hits, and then 14 when everyone's got a social life and is going to do things. And you're like, hey, this sucks. Like there's like so much evolution. And sometimes you have a conversation about like, do you still want this? Is this still fun? They're like, absolutely. I love this. It's great. And then other people, I remember one of the athletes that we were working with, she was for sure like one of the most talented club girls we had. And like, we thought she was going to go the whole road all the way to college. And we got to like 9th grade and it was like, I kind of like want to go with my friends to boarding school. And I want to like, try hockey and I want to try soccer. And like the biggest fear for her, back to hopefully the lesson moment, was that it wasn't so much that she didn't want to do it. She was scared of what we were going to say. She was scared of what her coaches and her parents and her friends were going to say, because she was worried that we were going to like, get on her for that. And, back to the whole stage of setting it up where it was like, no, man, I just want you to be healthy and happy. And gymnastics is a part of your life. I think because we set that fabric up early, it wasn't this big, shocking announcement. She was like, oh, well, I want to go to boarding school and do a couple of other sports. And I was like, that's great. I hope you're happy. And I love that you were here, and we'll see you when you come home. But it was so like mind blowing to her. She thought I was going to like yell at her. I was like, no, just go be happy. Like, that's fine. Somebody else retired because her back was a problem. And she was like, I want to try powerlifting. I was like, that's amazing. Go for it. That's cool. But again, back to the, we have to be very careful about over communicating that it's okay if things change and this is your journey and we're just here helping you out. And I'll be bummed if you're not here, but it's not the end of the world. It really is.
Totally.
And hopefully me doing a good job of not tying my sense of identity as a coach to the girls and who wins nationals and who's going to get level 10 and who's getting scholarships and all that kind of stuff. That's a big old can of worms right there, but that definitely still happens. It's getting better, but some places for sure, like their coaching is definitely tying to the accomplishments and how many 10s they have and what scholarships are going on. And so when somebody leaves or medically retires, it's just like, sucks the air out of the room a little bit,
Yeah, for sure.
There are some questions that I think are probably the best approach, because they're kind of like two things we're hitting on right now. And this one goes back to, I think, the whole not judging yourself based off like eating normal and working out only 4 days per week or 3 days per week, or maybe not working at all for a week, So someone says, how do you shift your training mentality and motivation from an elite athlete to a healthy lifestyle even though you know your elite athlete wasn't the healthiest for you. So this person sounds like they trained for many years at a high level of gymnastics. And now they're struggling with normal food, exercise, all that kind of stuff. So I'm not sure if you have thoughts on that.
I would say for me, the biggest shift has been like, and I still struggle with this, but you can like work out and not kill yourself in that workout and it be an accomplishment. Like moving your body can now be your form of exercise and your form of working out. You don't need to be dripping in sweat, unable to walk, waking up the next morning like so sore to feel like you did something.
Yeah.
But that's hard. That's so hard to adjust to. And for me, I've started to look at working out as like celebrating and being, I work out because I love my body, not because I'm trying to punish it. And the shift of like, I don't have to be a certain weight or a certain, you know, strength level. I don't have, it's not this performance thing that I'm chasing now. What I'm chasing is to just be the best version of me and be the healthiest version of myself, whatever that means. And that kind of translates to food as well. Like if you want to go out and order the chicken Alfredo, go do it. I'm telling you right now, like go eat the burger, go eat the pizza, go do those things. But you can also, you know, eat healthy because that's what makes you feel good. But it's about finding this new way because what you ate when you were an athlete will not work for you when you're not an athlete. Working out the way you did when you were an athlete will not, probably it's not feasible to do when you have a job. I don't know what time they wake up in the morning. I don't know how you're getting in 5 hours working out, you know, while still having a job. But it's hard, and it's the recognition of like my body's going to look different. I'm gonna look in the mirror, and there's probably gonna be, you know, a few months where I'm like, oh my God, like this isn't what I used to look like. But that's okay because you're not meant to be that person forever.
Right.
And that shift is hard. And it's like, I don't think there's an answer for it. I think everyone, like, you're kind of on your own journey. But just reminding yourself, like, you've had a gift your whole life. It's okay to not work out because of that. Like, it's okay to just move your body because you want to move your body. And it's okay to not move your body when you don't want to move your body. It's okay to eat salad when you want to eat salad. And it's okay to eat pizza when you want to eat pizza. Like, everything has to be this like idea of balance, and the balance you had as an athlete is going to be different than the balance that you have now. And there's going to be a tough patch. There will be a tough patch in the middle where you feel like it's the only way you have control. And I think that's what a lot of gymnasts suffer with. And I think that's why a lot of eating disorders are really prominent in our sport and like overworking out, because it's what you can control. And I think you need to let go of this aspect of like control in your life and just kind of take a deep breath and just let it happen. Let your body change, you know, like go do new things, go try new foods because you've never been able to, and recognize that it doesn't make you a bad person. And if you're afraid of what other people are going to think of you or going to comment on the way that you look, those people shouldn't be in your life.
Facts.
You know, like if your body doesn't change after sport, you are either still treating yourself like a high level athlete or you didn't try very hard when you were one. That's kind of how I look at it.
And I think that reframing of performance away from scores, skills, levels, whatever, to performance, like, I just want to be mentally and physically well. I just want to feel good. Like, I don't want to crawl to the shower because my ankles hurt, so I don't have to destroy myself on a workout like in college. Like, so many times I just remember being like, dude, I feel awful right now, but like, this is kind of like what I'm doing for sports. And like, I remember like the first couple like years out of college, I was like training hard-ish, but I was just like, God, I don't feel awful. Like my back doesn't hurt all the time and my ankles don't hurt all the time. Like, this is great. This is a wonderful feeling. And like reframing, like, all right, a little bit less working out, but like doing it what it takes care of myself and being happy is very different than like, this is an unpopular opinion, but I'm going to say, as you were talking, I was considering not saying this, but like my boss, Mike Ronald, works in the MLB. And the first thing he says to MLB pitchers, they're like, okay, throwing a baseball is bad for your elbow and your arm. Let's just get that out of the way first. Like, and I'm actually at the point now where I think that elite level gymnastics and NCAA high level, it's not good for you. Like, it's long-term joint sustainability and stuff. Like, you could argue it's not the healthiest thing for you, but that is what a lot of people, they want to compete at a high level. And that's what, unfortunately, there is some bumps and bruises along the way. So I'm not saying it can't be better and we can improve on people's, wellness during the career. I'm not saying just like everyone get hurt, but I'm just saying is like, it comes with the dotted line. So like, it's going to be hard. You're going to get some injuries. You're going to get sore. That's the nature of the beast. And after you're done with that, like you have to like get around that. Like, oh, it doesn't have to hurt all the time. Like I don't have to be sore all the time. I don't have to be my back and my ankles, stuff like that. Like you can work out and just take care of yourself for just feeling good. And yeah, sometimes your body may change and things may change completely, but like, yeah, what you were doing at high level gymnastics wasn't the healthiest when you were doing it. So normal is actually probably healthy.
Yeah. And like, last thing on that is I think you need to take the word have to like out of your vocabulary.
Yes.
You don't have to work out. You don't have to eat this. Like, you don't have to go to bed at 9 p.m. You don't have and that's the part about college sports that when it ends, it's awesome. Like you don't have to do anything for anyone. Like, and that is as liberating as it gets. Like if you want to go away for the weekend, you don't have to ask anyone. You don't have to do a lot of things, but that the freedom also you need to translate into, the working out and the eating and the things that you're used to. And it's not that you need to completely drop off against it and rebel against working out or rebel against eating healthy, but understand that like, you don't have to do anything. Now you get to, now you want to. That's where like balance and sustainability comes from, is like, now I work out because I want to, I like the way it makes me feel, but I don't work out. I don't like run 5 miles every morning. Like I woke up this morning, I went and walked on the treadmill for 45 minutes and that was my workout for the day. Well, some gymnasts would listening to this would be like, oh my God, that's not enough. Like you did, all of those, but that's the narrative of like, that's what I want to do. That's what makes me feel good. I don't have to do anything. I get to do this because I want to.
Yeah. And to that too, I think go ahead. Sorry.
Like talking to yourself that way and speaking to yourself kindly is so over, like it's so, people don't talk about that. Like speak to yourself like you are talking to your friend and your teammate.
I was just going to jump in and say that there's also a blessing in the nodding have to is like, I know a lot of people who never skied, they never went on adventurous things, they never water tubed, they never did any of the riskier things because they didn't want to get hurt. And so now all those things, I'm not saying go do them all and get hurt, but like you have the opportunity to snowboard and ski and like do whatever you want and not have to worry about it because you're worried about getting hurt for whatever thing. So yeah, I think there is definitely a silver lining in that kind of aspect to it. And this next one is this is gonna be a little heavy one, but I am curious your thoughts here because again, you compete at a higher level than I did, but how do you come to terms with the goals that you didn't accomplish?
That's a trick.
That's why I saved that one for two. I can buy some time and say that I definitely wish I just like did not make a lineup on a couple events, no matter how much I tried, because our team was just so good on floor and vault, and I was not so good on floor and vault. So like I was really upset with myself after I finished of being like, I wish I was more talented. I wish I worked harder. I wish I made this spot, and it just didn't happen. And I think there's a certain level of using it for fuel and future goals. There's a certain level of letting it go and realizing like nothing from this point forward is going to change that I didn't make lineup in college. And so like, there's this phrase about like the first arrow that like hits you, someone shoots at you, but all the rest of the arrows you hit are you shooting yourself in the foot. So every time you're miserable about it and you're angry about it and you're upset about it and you're ruminating about it, nothing productive is happening. And that was the big unlock for me, which was like literally from now until the day I die, nothing is going to change the fact that I didn't make lineup on these events and compete in college. So I can either be miserable for 60 years or I can find a way to accept it and move forward and realize that this is just stirring a pot of a lot of bitterness. So yeah, that was, for me, that's what happened. I'm not sure if you have other thoughts there.
I think you just first, I'll just 2 parts. Number one, stop comparing yourself to other people. Because a lot of the times you have goals for yourself because of other people. And sure, I wanted to go to the Olympics. What a cool thing to say that I went to the Olympics. I didn't go. Guess what? I'm okay. You know, I stopped comparing myself to the girls that went, and I just said, you know what? Good for you. It's what you deserve. That just wasn't my path. And that doesn't mean that you're a loser or that, you know, you can learn that things in this life just aren't for you. And there's valuable lessons in losing. There's valuable lessons in not reaching your goals too. Like, not everything that you set yourself to do will happen in your life. That's why they're goals. And I think for me, like, I was a pretty much an event specialist my entire college career. And I remember thinking like, oh, I wish I was better at beam, or I wish I was better at vault, or I wish I was like better at bars. I had a lot of injuries come up in my college career that prevented me from even training bars. Like, I had to hang the grips up, you know, right after my freshman year. I could only do so many reps on vault. Like, I had a lot of like injury things that prevented me from being the all-around superstar that I wanted to be. But I just came to terms with like, you know what? I'm going to be Syd Soloski, the greatest floor specialist that this university has ever seen. That's who I'm going to be. And that's what I did. Is like, I remember girls would be like, I'm so upset I'm only in 1 lineup, or I just want to be, I'm only doing 2 this year and I did 4 last year. And I was like, you guys, like, I'm sitting here as the kid that does 1, and I am more fulfilled by that because I don't have this crazy expectation. Like, I just went out there and I was the best damn version of myself. My scholarship was threatened my freshman year. I wasn't even projected to be in the lineup my freshman year. 2 girls went down the day of the meet, and that's the only reason I got to go in. And it was that mindset shift of like, this is my time to prove something. I'm going to do my best at it. Wasn't the best floor routine I ever did, but it was good enough. And from that point on, I just remember telling myself, like, who cares if I'm not in the vault lineup? I'm in the floor lineup, and I'm going to be so grateful for that. And I think it's hard, but the letting go aspect, like, you got to let it go. You can use it to fuel your fire, but that only works for so long, because then you're just anger driven. And you can't just stay trying to prove other people wrong your whole life. Like, that's a hard task, because then you're putting, you're putting a lot of work. That's a lot of work. And you're now valuing other people's opinion of you. Like, yeah, you're going to have goals and you're going to fall short and it sucks, and let it suck. But then wake up the next day and say, you know what? I'm going to be the best blank version of myself.
Yeah. It's funny you're mentioning this, because I think for me, and I think for other people, is that it's hard to see what you gain from not meeting a goal or not having a certain way, right? Like, of course, I wish that I was like ridiculously talented, had all these skills, and I made every lineup and I was like super easy, right? But I also think a lot about is that not being supernaturally talented and not making lineups, man, my work ethic is relentless, right? And I think the only reason I coach and started a company for gymnastics was because of that, not in spite of that. So I think that, like, if I had been insanely talented, competed all around, I probably wouldn't have done this with shift at all, right? And for you, if you say you had been on bars and on vault, like, maybe you wouldn't be the ridiculous floor specialist that you were, because you had to have other events to train and you had to like type. But like, it's a very good case to make that you were only as good as you were on floor and so dependable because you were doing only floor. And like, versus if you were spread across 4 events, who knows? You know what I mean?
And like, being a floor specialist gave me a lot of opportunity to become a leader and work on that aspect of sport. And I'm telling anyone that watches this, those lessons will carry you further in life than the girl that scored 17 perfect tens. What you learn from sport and the lessons that you take to heart and you think, I'm going to learn about grit. I'm going to be resilient. I'm going to work harder than everyone because I never had it like everyone. That translates for the rest of your life. Your talent will come to a point where it's not going to matter for you. You're not now separated because of your athletic ability. So learn through the opportunities that you're given. And I think I was given an incredible opportunity. Some people might be bummed that they were they did one event. And I'm not, threatened by that. I'm not insecure by that. That might not be good enough for you, but that was good enough for me because I learned a lot from it. And I became the most dependable, best sixth up person that I could be for my team. I wanted to be the girl that no one feared. Oh my God, is she going to fall? Oh my God, is she going to crack under pressure? My teammates always were like, we never worried about you. And that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be the kid that no one had to worry about. In my job now, I want to be the employee that my boss isn't like, oh my God, is she doing her job? Or you know what I'm saying? Like, I
totally.
always I wanted to be dependable. I don't want you to worry about me because I'm doing me. It's really easy to say. And I know not everyone has that ability to let go. But for me, it was like, just be okay with who you are because that's where you're in and you can't change it.
I feel like I should get like a slow clap for that one. That one's amazing. All right. Okay. We got two more. So this one, man, these are hard hitting. So what do you do when coaches aren't supportive of athletes quitting? This often happens. They rarely get the support they need to transition out of sport because there's a lot of resentment. Whew. I'll go first on one first, which is, I think this is a time to lean on your teammates. I think because regardless of whether your coach is whatever, doing whatever, I think oftentimes your teammates and your friends are generally supportive of you as a human because you're friends with them and they love you. And so generally you have a handful of friends that are like, just want you to be happy, whatever you're doing. And you've had long talks about, I want to quit because my back hurts or because I don't want to do this anymore. It's not exciting. So yeah, my offer to this person who asked would be to try to, as hard as it's hard to block the noise out of everybody else around you, whether it's coaches or stuff, but you should be hopefully having some long casual chats with your best friends to try to get some support there,
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And I think, I definitely think people that medically retire, people that quit, your coaches always have this idea like, oh, they don't have it. There's such this like negative, like umbrella
mental
put over,
toughness excuse. Yeah.
like, oh my God, like grow up. Not everyone is cut out for it, but it doesn't make them less of a person. Yes, gymnastics is hard, and gymnastics, it takes a very specific person and a very specific type of person to make it through all of that. But that doesn't mean that you're less than or better than anyone else that did or didn't make it. And, as a coach, yeah, a lot of them feel like they're like shunned and they have resentment and they're like, screw gymnastics. I want nothing to do with it. And I can understand that. But having a support system that genuinely cares about you is really important, and you do need to lean on that. And my advice my honest to God advice is make friends outside of sports. Make friends that do not know you for gymnastics. Make friends with people where that's not your lifeline to them. Because now that I'm done with gymnastics, the people I hear from the most are the people that weren't friends with me because I was a gymnast. They're not the teammates that I had because that was our common bond. And I think when you get removed from the sport, you have this aha moment of like, who's in my life for me and who's in my life because of my sport.
Mm-hmm.
And I think having people in a support system outside of athletics will be the breath of fresh air that you need, because they will tell you, oh my God, who cares that you quit? Like, you're still my friend. Like, I still want to go get ice cream with you. I still want to go hang out with you. And that's what's going to get you in the mindset of like, okay, I don't need to keep bringing myself down because I wasn't tough enough to my coaches, or however
Yeah.
toxic way people frame it. But like, you kind of have to break away from the sport and not keep telling yourself it's because I'm less than, just
Mhm.
have and it's like, I cannot tell people enough, and college athletes especially, like, put time and effort into being friends with the kids that sit next to you in class. Take time and effort to be friends with people that you met at the dining hall. Yes, you're going to want to hang out with your teammates, and the teammate relationship is very much like again, one of those like have tos. On a college team, like, you have to be civil with your teammates, otherwise
Right.
there's gonna be a lot of problems. But once you graduate and once you're away from it, you realize, like, the type of people you want in your life and the type of people that are really going to support you through the hardship. And a lot of those people come from outside of sport.
Mm.
And it's hard.
Yeah.
I can only imagine it would be hard to still have like a really tight relationship with your teammates as friends while they're still doing the sport and you're not.
Right.
You're going to feel like an outsider to your own friend group. And that is not a fun feeling.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's why I think it's like important that your teammates are your sisters, they're your friends. You're fed that narrative a lot in college, but you also need to be able to like take that with a grain of salt and go have friends and people and things to do outside of your sport. Otherwise, you're
Yeah.
always you're always going to feel this less than mentality, especially if they're still doing the sport.
I couldn't agree more. And I was so grateful to have in college. I had a lot of friends that were just in physical therapy school and knew nothing about gymnastics. And it was amazing. And then in high school, I had like 5 best friends. I was the only person doing gymnastics. They all played soccer and did whatever. And yeah, if your whole life is constantly gymnastics and you have no other friends or connections, there's no way to get away from it when it's not going well. And it feels like the walls are kind of caving in on you. So I'm just going to breeze past this, but go to public school. Don't get homeschooled for your whole career. Just going to throw that out there as maybe a good idea. Okay, next question. Um, next question. All right, last one here. And we actually kind of already danced on this, but how do you cope with retiring if it's from an injury or a medical retirement? And so I've actually seen a lot of people on the PT side on this situation. So I can definitely share some thoughts, and I'd love to hear yours if you know friends or anybody. I think the first step to determine is like, do you still want to be involved in gymnastics? Like, if you still love the sport and you really enjoy what the sport stands for and whatever, there are many other ways to still be involved. And I think Eva, who's the director of our gym, she's like an absolute wizard at this, which is like when she knows someone's struggling, she'll make up a job position for them just to be in the gym because they might have fallen out of, the ability to do gymnastics, but they still love the people, they love the sport, they love whatever. So she'll be like, just come clean the office for 2 hours and I'll pay you because I need some help with this. She needs zero help with the office cleaning. She just wants someone to be involved. So then there's the option of like, do you want to work with the little ones? Do you want to coach compulsory? Do you want to somehow be involved in judging? Do you want to somehow be involved in classes? Like, if you still love gymnastics and you still love the gym, then there's many other things to try. And some people are like, it's just not gymnastics. It cuts too deep and they have to move on. And I understand that perspective, but there are some possibilities there as well. If you don't want to be involved in gymnastics and you want to hang it up, I really encourage people to try, like, make a list of all like the 5 sports or the 5 hobbies that you wish you could do when you were stuck in gymnastics the whole time, and just try them all sequentially. Just like try field hockey for a couple, just try soccer for a little bit, just try track for a little bit. If you hate them all, then do something else, but maybe it's a non-sport hobby that you can find something you do, and just keep trying stuff. Because I had a lot of other hobbies I fell in love with when I had more time not away from gymnastics. So yeah, that's my 2 cents. But I don't know if you or other like friends of yours that had a struggle with this.
I mean, I would agree. I think it's, if you're the person that, suffered an injury that took you out or whatever it was, like, remember that it's your journey and it's your life. And if you want to be involved, great. But don't feel like you have to be involved
Right.
if it's something that's going to be really hard for you. And again, it doesn't make you a bad person to not want to be around it.
Mm-hmm.
If it is hurting you more than it's benefiting you, that is not an environment that you should be in. And I think, yeah, go do things that you want to do. Go find stuff that you like to do outside of what you did. But there is going to be that hard part of like, this wasn't my terms.
Mm.
I didn't choose this. And that's really hard for athletes. And I was fortunate, and I don't feel like I even have the grounds to speak on it because I chose for my career to end the way it did. I had one of my absolute best friends in this world, her career ended because of COVID. One day we were getting ready for her senior night, and, coaches called us in and said the season is canceled. And that was it for her career. She didn't know it was her last bar routine. She didn't know it was her last time competing in front of her family. Like, that is a really, really hard reality. And I watched how much that, the class of 2020, I think, really struggled through that. Was like, this wasn't on my own terms. This isn't how it was supposed to end. And completely out of your control. Completely out of your control. And again, this is where I preach therapy. Go talk to someone through this, and you're probably going to be reassured that, like, again, you're more than your sport, all these things that we've been talking about, but it's okay to feel bitter. It's okay to not want to be around it. Like, that's an okay narrative to have. And you're not a bad teammate because it's hard for you to support the girls that get to now go do it again.
Yeah.
And I remember
go ahead. Sorry.
I remember that day, it was like really hard for the two girls that were done. There was actually 3 of them. One was medically retiring after the year, and then the other 2 were seniors. And everyone else wanted to throw themselves a pity party because everyone was upset that season was over. And I remember snapping and being like, this isn't about you. You get to come back to campus and do this again. They don't. So if you're a teammate of someone that's been taken out due to injury or whatever the circumstance may be, it's not about you. Like, these are moments where if you're truly their friend and you really want to support them, like, understand that, like, this is really hard for them, and just be a support system. You don't have to, like, don't be the person that's like, I understand how you feel, because
lies.
Like, you're not. And I remember that being really hard for them, was like, no one gets it. No. And that's the thing about sports being done. Not a lot of people understand what that's like. And you're probably not going to find a lot of people that are going to understand that. So it's, again, a kind of like a responsibility on yourself of like, I need to work through this for me. And then I need to put myself in an environment that benefits me and doesn't hurt me.
Yep. Totally makes sense. And I will give the quick praise for, sometimes therapy is, I have an extensive relationship with therapy, and I feel like sometimes therapy is to go in to get actual helpful advice and see things from a different angle and maybe reframe some thoughts you have. And sometimes therapy is just like to literally pay someone for an hour to just word vomit and be frustrated and get it all out. And then honestly get some confirmation. Like, sometimes my therapist is like, yeah, that sucks, man. Like, that shit's hard. Like, and I'm sorry, but like, you're doing everything you can. And like, you just got to keep trudging through. Like, and it's sometimes just to hear that it's like a bit of confirmation. Like, all right, well, this is out of my control and this sucks. And I'm allowed to think this sucks. And at least I feel better about the situation. And now I can move forward, So don't always go in searching for an answer. Sometimes, just realize that there's a time and a space just to get it off your chest. So it's not brewing down there. You know what I mean? Just to like be upset about it. That's okay. Just to be angry and be frustrated about it. And that's part of the coping process, part of the grieving process. You know what I mean? So
you have to feel what you feel. If you just continue to suppress everything, it becomes a really big monster that now you're going to need to go to therapy for to get help with, versus it could have been something that you could have talked about. It's kind of like preventative. It's like rehab in physical therapy. Like, okay, we foresee that you have this knee issue. Let's do these exercises to try and prevent it from happening, versus like, now let's just wait till the ACL tears. Like, you don't have to reach a breaking point to go to therapy.
Totally. I agree.
You can feel some type of way and just want to talk through it.
Well, I agree. I think I'm very happy that I opened Twitter that day and saw your comment, because this is a very helpful conversation, and one I think that desperately needs to be spread amongst all, not only like current retirees or people who are just out, but also people who are like looking down the barrel as sophomores, juniors, whatever, or maybe you're just in high school and are thinking about, moving on from the sport or from any sport. So yeah, I appreciate, again, your time and you're being honest and vulnerable about it. Cause I think that, again, a lot of people are not willing to have this uncomfortable conversation that this is a problem, man. This is a problem. Like, we need people to have an off ramp. So any parting thoughts before we wrap her up?
Parting thoughts.
I think we did pretty good. So feel free to not have parting thoughts.
Covered a lot. Yeah. I think it's just you're going to go, it's going to be hard. And I think you just need to prepare yourself for that. If you're someone that is about to retire, is retired, thinking of it, like whatever that circumstance may be, and everyone's going to go through this at some point. But just having, like, knowing in your heart, like, this is probably gonna be one of the hardest things I'm gonna have to do, but I'm gonna face it and I'm gonna tackle it because I am strong. And no matter how my career ended, or I didn't reach my goals, I got injured, whatever it was, like, you're still a human being, and that is far more important than anything else in this world. And if I can hound one thing into people, is that your identity is not the sport that you do. It's not. Like, there's so many layers to you, and it might take you a few weeks to figure that out, or years, or your lifetime to figure that out. But just be kind to yourself in this transition and understand that a lot of changes are going to occur. But if you have the mindset that everything happens for a reason, and I'm going to learn from the hardships, you're going to be so okay. And hopefully, people feel more comfortable having this conversation, because it is hard and it is vulnerable. And it's like, oh my God, like, do I really want to talk about the bad things or talk about whatever? But I think if you're brave enough to do it, like, it's important to have those conversations, whether it's in your small circle or, on a larger audience, because you're going to help somebody.
Facts. That's a great way to end. Syd, thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and I'm very excited to get this out to everybody.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. But I'm just hosting the mic, man. Just hosting the mic. All right, we'll catch you soon. All right.
Okay, see ya.